Picture the toughest person you know, the one who handles everything, who never breaks, who keeps going when everyone else has already quit. Now make her life 10 times harder. Take away the bed, the painkillers, the locked door, the hospital, the grocery store, the phone. Take away every single system built to keep a human being alive and functioning. Now tell her she is also pregnant again. That was not a nightmare. That was Tuesday. For 300,000 years, that was simply what it meant to be a woman. And the most disturbing part is not how brutal it was. The most disturbing part is how completely history erased it, not by accident, by design. Because what prehistoric women did every single day to keep humanity alive was considered too ordinary to record. It did not look like conquest. It did not leave monuments. It left something far more durable than stone. It left you. This is the hard truth about prehistoric women that history forgot to tell you. Let us start with the lie you were probably taught without even realizing it. The classic image goes something like this. Male hunters go out, bring back the meat, and the group survives because of them. Women stay close to the camp. They tend children. They wait. This image is everywhere. In textbooks, in museum dioramas, in the way early humans get depicted in films. Strong men, passive women, simple story. The problem is the archaeology does not support it. Anthropologist Blaffer Hrdy spent decades reconstructing what early human social life actually looked like. What she found is almost the opposite of the story you were told. In hunter-gatherer groups studied both through fossil records and through living populations like the Hadza of Tanzania, women consistently provided between 50 and 80% of the group's total caloric intake. Not through hunting large game, through something that looked quieter but required extraordinary expertise. Gathering, tracking, remembering. A woman in a prehistoric group carried an internal map of her entire landscape. She knew which plants bloomed in which season. She knew which berries were safe in small amounts and lethal in large ones. She knew where the water source moved when the dry season came. She knew which roots could be eaten raw and which had to be processed first, or they would kill you. This was not passive knowledge. This was a survival database built across decades and passed down to daughters and nieces across generations. If that woman died, that knowledge died with her, and the group got closer to starving. The hunt brought protein. The gathering kept everyone alive between hunts. Both mattered, but history decided one of them was the real story. Now here is where it gets harder to hear. Do all of that work. Carry all of that knowledge. Be that essential to the survival of every person around you, and do it while your body is doing something no male body ever has to do. Researcher Rosenberg, who has spent her career studying hominin birth mechanics, uncovered something that should make your jaw drop. The human birth canal and the human infant skull are almost incompatible in size. They fit together so tightly that human childbirth requires a level of physical effort and danger that is essentially unique among primates. And Rosenberg's work suggests this mechanical tension has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. It was not a modern problem. It was baked into human biology long before medicine existed to manage it. A prehistoric woman could expect to be pregnant or nursing for the majority of her adult life from her mid-teens onward. 5 pregnancies, 6, 7, each one a serious risk of death. Maternal mortality in societies without medical intervention runs somewhere between 1% and 2% per birth. That sounds small until you multiply it across a lifetime of pregnancies. The cumulative risk becomes staggering. Childbirth was not a milestone event for prehistoric women. It was a recurring threat that they survived, or did not survive, over and over again. And between pregnancies, they were still gathering, still feeding the group, still remembering the map. But here's the part that genuinely surprises most people when they hear it. Prehistoric women were not doing this alone, and the way they avoided doing it alone is one of the most fascinating pieces of evolutionary biology you have probably never been taught. Anthropologist Kristen at the University of Utah noticed something unusual while doing fieldwork with the Hadza. Older women who had stopped reproducing, were some of the most productive foragers in the entire group. They were working harder than almost anyone else, and their grandchildren were healthier and better fed than the children of groups without active grandmothers present. Hawkes developed what became known as the grandmother hypothesis. The argument is remarkable in its simplicity. Human women live far longer past menopause than any other primate. That is not a biological accident. Evolution built it in because it worked. A woman who stopped having her own children and redirected her energy toward helping her daughters raise theirs saved more of her genetic line than a woman who kept reproducing until her body gave out. The grandmother was not retired. She was running one of evolution's most effective survival strategies. Think about what that means for a moment. Your grandmother's existence as a helper, as someone who shows up, who feeds, who carries, who knows things, is one of the oldest and most refined adaptations in human history. It was not a cultural tradition. It was a biological strategy that made your species possible. Early human social life was built around networks of related women. Grandmothers, mothers, aunts, older sisters, all pooling knowledge and labor to keep children alive through conditions that should have been impossible to survive. Blaffer Hrdy calls this cooperative breeding. It is the reason human children, who are born more helpless and require more years of care than almost any other animal on Earth, were able to survive at all. Human infants are extraordinarily expensive to raise. The only way to afford them was to share the cost. Women built the system that made that sharing work. Now here is the layer that almost nobody discusses openly. Prehistoric life was not a peaceful communal paradise. Evidence from studied hunter-gatherer populations and from primatological research points to something harder. Primatologist Frans de Waal has documented extensively how female primates in social hierarchies develop sophisticated political intelligence precisely because they cannot rely on physical dominance to protect themselves. They build alliances. They track relationships. They remember who helped them and who did not. They navigate status with precision. Early human women almost certainly did the same, and they did it inside social structures that could be deeply dangerous. Anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon's controversial but widely discussed fieldwork documented patterns of violence against women, including from within their own groups, as a consistent feature of certain early human-like societies. Women moved between groups, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes not. They lived inside power dynamics they did not control and could not escape, and they survived inside those dynamics anyway. Their social intelligence was not a soft skill, it was armor. And then there is one more thing, one more layer of the story that gets almost no attention: grief. Prehistoric women buried children regularly. Infant mortality in early human groups was devastating by any modern standard. Researchers estimate that somewhere between 30 and 50% of children born in prehistoric conditions did not survive past the age of 5. A woman who had 6 pregnancies might raise 3 children to adulthood. She would grieve the others in the same body that had carried them, without therapy, without time off, without a language that even had a word for that specific kind of loss. And then she would get up the next morning and go find food for the ones who were still alive. That is not a metaphor for resilience. That is a literal description of what happened, repeatedly, across hundreds of thousands of years. History did not record it because history was largely written by people who had decided which kinds of survival counted as heroic. Battles counted. Kingdoms counted. Women keeping children alive through grief and cold and danger and physical risk did not make the list. But here is what history could not erase. You, reading this right now. You are the unbroken genetic line of women who survived every single one of those nights. Not one of your maternal ancestors died before passing something on. Your anxiety in uncertain situations is their situational awareness. Your protectiveness over people you love is their ancient circuit for keeping children alive. Your ability to read a room, to sense when something is wrong before you can name it, is their social intelligence, refined across 300,000 years of navigating the unpredictable. The hard truth about prehistoric women is not that their lives were brutal. It is that their lives were essential and extraordinary, and almost entirely invisible to the version of history you inherited. They did not get monuments. They did not get names carved in stone. They got something more permanent than either of those things. They got you. And you woke up this morning in a warm bed, complaining about being tired. They would have laughed. And then they would have told you to get up. There is work to do.